what we're talking about? Taking violent crime off the street, fighting the fentanyl epidemic. How is that partisan? And it's almost comical, Sandra, that these people think this is partisan. We're taking the Department of Justice back to its core function, fighting violent crimes and saving children's lives. And that's what we're going to do with DEA, with ATF, with FBI, with the U.S. Marshals, working hand in hand with Kristi Noem at Homeland Security, working with Mike Waltz, working with Pete Hegseth, working with Tulsi Gabbard, working with Marco Rubio. They don't know the team that's hit them, and we're going to protect America at the direction of Donald Trump.
We have new CNN reporting on the federal felony indictment against New York Attorney General Letitia James. Two sources are telling us that Attorney General Pam Bondi was caught off guard by the indictment. Let's go live now to CNN senior White House correspondent Kristen Holmes. What are you learning from your sources, Kristen?
Yeah, and this comes after CNN had already reported that the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General had been hesitant to bring charges against James because of the information that they had heard from Eric Siebert, who was at that time the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia. So he's since left that post.
Okay, so this is one of those stories that makes you sit back and wonder what in the world is happening inside the Department of Justice right now. Because what I am about to tell you is genuinely shocking, and I do not use that word lightly when covering political news. We are talking about missing documents at the highest levels of government. We are talking about deleted files that should have been preserved. We are talking about a federal judge looking at the Attorney General of the United States and basically saying, "I do not believe you." This is wild, and it is happening right now in real time while most Americans have no idea. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General appointed by President Trump, just had one of the most disastrous court appearances we have seen from any high-ranking government official in recent memory. She was in court facing questions about missing DOJ documents, and let me tell you, it did not go well for her at all. The judge was not having any of the excuses being offered. The questions were pointed and direct and demanded real answers. And Bondi, according to people who were in that courtroom watching this unfold, looked completely unprepared to explain where critical evidence had gone and why the DOJ could not produce documents that should clearly exist in their records. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
You publicly claim to have the Epstein client list waiting for your review and then produce nothing relevant to that claim.
Senator Durbin, if you listen to my entire clip on that, I said I had not reviewed it yet, that it was sitting on my desk along with the JFK files, the Martin Luther King files, and I said I had not yet reviewed it. And if you see our memo on Epstein, you will see, our memo on Epstein clearly points out that there was no client list, our July 6th memo.
Who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you.
There's been public reporting that Jeffrey Epstein showed people photos of President Trump.
And here's where it gets really concerning for anyone who cares about the rule of law in this country. Court filings reveal multiple instances of documents that should exist but mysteriously cannot be found anywhere in the system. We are talking about communications between Bondi and the White House that have simply vanished into thin air without explanation. We are talking about files that were supposedly deleted, accidentally according to the DOJ, right when they would have been most relevant to ongoing investigations. Come on, are you kidding me right now? How does that happen by accident at the highest levels of the federal government where there are supposed to be protocols for preserving everything? The judge in this case was absolutely scathing in their response to what the DOJ was presenting as their explanation. And I want you to really understand what happened here, because this is not normal by any stretch of the imagination. A federal judge looked at the nation's top law enforcement official and said, "I do not believe you. This looks like obstruction, and there will be consequences if you are hiding evidence from this court." That is not some partisan commentator on television saying that to get ratings. That is a federal judge in an official court proceeding, putting that on the record for everyone to see and for history to remember. That is extraordinary, and it should concern every single American, regardless of political affiliation. Now, the DOJ's defense of all this has been weak at best and insulting at worst to anyone paying attention. They are claiming that files were accidentally deleted without any way to recover them. They are saying that the judge's order for documents is premature, whatever that means when you are talking about evidence that is legally required to be produced under the rules of discovery. They are basically stonewalling and hoping that everyone will just move on and forget about this whole situation. But the judge is clearly not buying it, and neither should we as citizens who care about accountability. And there is more to this story that makes it even more troubling. When you look at the bigger picture, whistleblowers have come forward exposing what they call a troubling culture of non-compliance within the DOJ under Bondi's leadership. We are talking about a pattern here, not just one isolated incident that could be explained away. Judges in multiple cases are reportedly losing patience over repeated failures to produce discovery materials that defendants have every legal right to access under the law. This is not how the justice system is supposed to work in America. The DOJ is supposed to be about finding truth and ensuring fairness, not hiding evidence and making documents disappear when they become inconvenient. So what is really going on here inside the nation's top law enforcement agency? Why are documents vanishing from the records? Why is the DOJ refusing to comply with court orders? And what exactly is in those missing communications between Bondi and the White House that someone apparently does not want anyone to see? These are the questions that matter. And these are the questions I am going to help you understand as we dig deeper into this story together. Because this is not just about Pam Bondi having a bad day in court and looking unprepared. This is about whether we can trust the Department of Justice to operate with integrity under this administration. This is about whether the people in charge of enforcing our laws are themselves following those laws. And based on what we are seeing right now, there are serious reasons to be concerned about the answers to those questions. Stick with me, because we are going to break all of this down, piece by piece. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what happened in that courtroom, why it matters for all of us, and what it could mean for Trump's entire legal strategy going forward. All right, so let us really dig into the details of what happened in this courtroom and why legal experts are calling this one of the most significant confrontations between a judge and the DOJ in recent memory. Because the details matter here, and most people are only getting fragments of this story from headlines that do not capture the full scope of what is going on behind the scenes. So here's the situation that led to this explosive courtroom moment. The DOJ under Pam Bondi was required to produce certain documents as part of ongoing legal proceedings against defendants who have rights under the Constitution. This is standard stuff in any court case. Both sides have to share relevant evidence through a process called discovery that has been part of our legal system for generations. It is a fundamental part of how our legal system works and ensures that trials are fair and based on actual facts rather than surprises and hidden information that one side keeps secret. The DOJ knows how this works better than anyone because they are supposed to be the experts on legal procedure in this country, and they enforce these rules against others every single day. But when it came time to actually produce these documents, the DOJ had problems, big problems that they could not explain away easily. They claimed that certain files could not be found anywhere in their systems. They said that some communications had been deleted and could not be recovered. They argued that the judge's order was premature and that they should not have to comply just yet, even though the law clearly required them to do so. And through all of this, the defense attorneys and the judge were sitting there wondering what exactly was going on inside the nation's top law enforcement agency that is supposed to set the standard for legal compliance. Now, let me be clear about what kinds of documents we are talking about here, because this is important context that changes everything. Court filings specifically reference communications between Pam Bondi and the White House that have vanished without any explanation. Think about that for a second and let it really sink in. The Attorney General of the United States, the person who is supposed to ensure independent and impartial enforcement of federal law without political interference, was apparently communicating with the White House about matters related to this case. And those communications have now disappeared from all records. You do not have to be a legal expert to understand why that raises serious red flags about what might have been discussed and why someone wanted those records gone permanently. The judge's reaction to all of this was unlike anything we typically see in federal court proceedings, where decorum and measured language are the norm. Judges are usually very measured and careful in their language. They have to be, because their words become part of the official record and can be appealed to higher courts. But this judge was clearly fed up with what they were seeing from the nation's law enforcement agency. The order that came out of this hearing was absolutely scathing in its criticism of the DOJ and their conduct. The judge explicitly said that this looks like obstruction of justice. The judge explicitly said there will be consequences if evidence is being hidden from this court. That is a federal judge essentially accusing the Attorney General's office of potentially criminal conduct. That is not normal, and it should not be treated as normal by anyone paying attention to what is happening. And here's where the pattern becomes really concerning for anyone who cares about the integrity of our justice system. This is not an isolated incident, according to whistleblowers who have come forward to expose what they describe as a troubling culture within the DOJ. These are people who work inside the department and have seen firsthand how things operate under Bondi's leadership every day. They are describing repeated failures to comply with discovery requests across multiple cases. They are describing judges in multiple cases losing patience with the DOJ's refusal to produce materials they are legally obligated to share. They are describing an environment where non-compliance has become the norm rather than the exception, and that should alarm everyone. Now, why would the DOJ be operating this way when they are supposed to be the guardians of legal compliance? What possible reason could there be for the nation's top law enforcement agency to be hiding documents and refusing to comply with court orders? Well, there are a few theories that legal experts and observers are discussing, and none of them are good for the administration or for public trust. One theory is that these documents contain information that would be embarrassing or politically damaging to President Trump or his inner circle of advisors. If communications between Bondi and the White House reveal improper coordination on legal matters, or worse, that could create massive problems for the administration. Remember that the Attorney General is supposed to be independent from political pressure. They are not supposed to be taking direction from the White House on how to handle specific cases or prosecutions. If those missing communications show that kind of coordination happening, that would be a scandal of enormous proportions that could shake the foundations of our government. Another theory is that the documents relate to other ongoing investigations that the administration does not want exposed to public scrutiny. There have been reports connecting this situation to Trump's broader legal battles, including questions about past DOJ investigations and even Epstein-related materials that could reveal improper motives behind certain decisions. If the DOJ is actively suppressing evidence that connects to these other controversies, that would explain the desperation to make documents disappear, even at the cost of angering federal judges and creating a constitutional crisis. A third theory, and this is the one that legal experts find most troubling, is that the DOJ has simply adopted a posture of lawlessness, where they believe they are above the rules that apply to everyone else in our society. When you have an attorney general who is willing to look a judge in the face and essentially say, "We are not going to comply with your orders," that suggests a fundamental breakdown in respect for the judicial system. It suggests that the people running the DOJ believe they can operate without accountability to anyone, and that should terrify anyone who cares about the rule of law in this country. The defense attorneys in this case are understandably outraged by what is happening in front of their eyes. They demanded internal DOJ documents, as they have every legal right to do under established law. They followed proper procedures and made legitimate requests through established channels that have worked for decades. And the DOJ responded by refusing compliance and calling the judge's order premature without any legal basis. That is not how the justice system is supposed to work in America. When a judge orders you to produce documents, you produce documents. You do not get to decide that the order does not apply to you because you work for a powerful administration. And this connects to broader questions about how the DOJ has been operating under this administration from the beginning. We have seen a pattern of the department being used as a political weapon rather than an impartial enforcer of the law. We have seen investigations that seem designed to help Trump's allies and hurt his enemies. We have seen norms and traditions that existed for decades being thrown out the window because they were inconvenient for the people in charge. This document situation is just the latest and most dramatic example of that pattern playing out in real time. The judge made clear that there will be consequences if evidence is being hidden from this court. But what those consequences look like remains to be seen. In theory, a judge has significant power to sanction attorneys and parties who refuse to comply with court orders. In extreme cases, contempt citations can be issued that carry real penalties. But when you are dealing with the Attorney General of the United States, the politics become incredibly complicated. Does a judge really want to hold the AG in contempt? Does anyone want to see what happens when the judicial branch and the executive branch go to war over something like this? These are uncharted waters, and nobody knows exactly how this will play out. All right, so let us break down everything we have covered into the key points you need to understand about this situation and why it matters. Because this is a complicated story with a lot of moving pieces, and I want to make sure you walk away knowing exactly what happened and why it matters so much for the future of our justice system and our democracy. Point number 1, Pam Bondi had a catastrophic day in court that exposed serious problems with how the DOJ is handling document production in legal proceedings. This was not a minor procedural dispute or a technical disagreement between lawyers about deadlines. This was a federal judge looking at the Attorney General's representatives and essentially calling them liars to their faces in open court. The judge said explicitly that they do not believe the DOJ's explanations for why documents are missing. The judge said this looks like obstruction of justice. The judge warned that there will be consequences if evidence is being hidden from this court. You cannot overstate how unusual and significant it is for a federal judge to make those kinds of statements about the Department of Justice in open court for the record. Point number 2, documents that should exist have mysteriously vanished, and the DOJ's explanations do not add up, no matter how you look at them. We are talking specifically about communications between Bondi and the White House that have disappeared from all records. We are talking about files that were supposedly deleted accidentally right when they would have been most relevant to ongoing cases that could embarrass the administration. The timing of these deletions is suspicious to say the least and strains credibility, and the fact that the DOJ cannot or will not produce these materials suggests that someone made a deliberate decision to make them go away forever. That is not how document retention is supposed to work at the highest levels of the federal government, where there are strict protocols for preserving records. Point number 3, the DOJ's defense strategy appears to be stonewalling and hoping the problem goes away on its own without consequences. They are calling the judge's order premature without any legal justification. They are refusing to comply with legitimate discovery requests that defendants have a right to make. They are acting like the normal rules of legal procedure do not apply to them because they represent the federal government. But that is not how our system works, and that is not how it has ever worked. The DOJ is supposed to be held to a higher standard than other litigants, not a lower one. When the nation's top law enforcement agency refuses to follow court orders, that undermines the entire foundation of our legal system and sends a terrible message about accountability to everyone. Point number 4. Whistleblowers have exposed a troubling culture of non-compliance within the DOJ that goes beyond this single case. This is important because it shows we are not dealing with an isolated incident or a one-time mistake that can be forgiven. People who work inside the department are coming forward at great personal risk to describe a pattern of behavior where the DOJ routinely fails to produce discovery materials that defendants have every right to access under the law. Judges in multiple cases are reportedly losing patience with this behavior and issuing warnings. That suggests a systemic problem with how the department is being run under Bondi's leadership, not just a few bad decisions in one particular matter. Point number 5, the missing communications between Bondi and the White House raise serious questions about the independence of the Attorney General from political pressure. The AG is supposed to operate independently from the White House when it comes to specific legal matters and prosecutions. That independence is crucial for ensuring that the justice system is fair and impartial rather than being used as a political weapon by whoever happens to be in power at the moment. If Bondi was communicating with the White House about ongoing cases, and if those communications were then deliberately destroyed to hide their contents, that would be a major scandal that goes to the heart of how our government is supposed to function. Point number 6. This situation connects to broader concerns about how the DOJ has been operating under the Trump administration from day one. We have seen a pattern over the past year of the department being used in ways that seem designed to benefit the president politically rather than to pursue impartial justice for all Americans. This document destruction situation fits right into that pattern of behavior. It suggests an administration that believes it is above the law and does not have to play by the same rules as everyone else. That attitude is corrosive to democracy and should concern people across the political spectrum who believe in accountability and the rule of law. Point number 7. The judge's warning about consequences creates uncertainty about what happens next in this case and potentially beyond. When a federal judge says there will be consequences for hiding evidence, that is not an empty threat to be ignored. Judges have significant power to sanction attorneys and parties who refuse to comply with court orders. In extreme cases, they can hold people in contempt, which can include fines and even jail time for those who defy the court. But exercising that power against the Attorney General of the United States would be unprecedented and would create a constitutional confrontation between branches of government. We are in uncharted territory here, and nobody knows exactly how this situation will resolve itself. Point number 8. The political implications of this for Trump and the Republican Party could be significant depending on how the story develops in the coming weeks. Trust in institutions is already at historic lows among the American public. When people see the nation's top law enforcement agency apparently destroying evidence and refusing to comply with court orders, that further erodes whatever faith remains in the fairness of our system. Democrats will absolutely use this to argue that the Trump administration is corrupt and lawless. Whether that argument resonates with voters depends on how much attention this story gets and what else comes out in the weeks and months ahead. So where does all of this leave us right now as Americans trying to understand what is happening to our institutions? It leaves us with a DOJ that appears to be in crisis, at least when it comes to following basic legal procedures and respecting court orders. It leaves us with an Attorney General whose credibility has been seriously damaged by what happened in that courtroom. It leaves us with missing documents that raise troubling questions about what the administration is trying to hide from the public. And it leaves us waiting to see whether the judge follows through on the warning about consequences and what that might look like in practice. This story is far from over and may just be getting started. In fact, it feels like we are just at the beginning of something that could become much bigger as more information comes out and as courts continue to demand compliance from the DOJ. The fundamental question at the heart of all this is simple. Is anyone above the law in America? The DOJ is supposed to be the institution that ensures the answer to that question is no. But right now, it looks like the DOJ itself might be operating as if the answer is yes, at least when it comes to protecting this administration from accountability. I will be watching this story closely and covering every development as it happens. If you want to stay informed about what comes next, make sure you are subscribed to this channel, because this is the kind of story that has the potential to reshape how we think about justice and accountability in America. I will see you in the next one.